Hey witches, how you doing today? We're back with another video, and today I want to talk a little bit about how has COVID changed witchcraft, or I guess more specifically the sort of witchcraft community. I think it's had some big effects on our community, and we're going to talk about that. And I want to share a little bit about my story and how COVID really changed the trajectory of what I thought was going to be sort of part of my journey through witchcraft. So yeah, before we get into it, for those of you who are new around here, my name is Taya. Welcome to the channel. We talk about all things witchcraft. And for those of you who are returning viewers, maybe coming in from another video, thank you so much for the support. It is very much appreciated. And all of you, please consider subscribing. It's a really great way to help us build the channel. So, how has COVID changed witchcraft, or affected witchcraft, I guess might be a better way to put it? I think it does. It really comes down to our community and how our communities sort of interact. I think what happened was a lot of people who were in covens or groups of some sort, right? They were kind of blown apart by COVID. They weren't able to meet anymore in person. I think some of those groups did a good job transitioning online. Right? But I know of a few groups that kind of just fell apart when COVID hit. But yep, some of them did. They transitioned online. And I think what happened for a lot of people who were solitary is technically when we're solitary, right? We are already sort of isolated and we're not really participating maybe a lot in the communities around us, which is fine, right? A lot of people choose to work that way. They want to be a solitary practitioner. But then COVID hits and we get isolated in all parts of our life, right? We're not allowed to see our friends and family. We're not allowed to go into work. And all of a sudden we're isolated everywhere. That isolation in our witchcraft practice starts to feel a little more uncomfortable. Whereas before it was sort of something fun we could do for ourselves, all of a sudden everything in our life is just something we do by ourselves. And naturally, I think it sort of changes us and makes us sort of want to maybe seek some community, and during COVID, online was the place to find that community. So there was a sort of big switch to like everything kind of going online. And I think we also had a ton of new witches and seekers, right? Maybe they're not necessarily a witch yet, but they definitely want to sort of explore witchcraft. And I think what happened was we're all sort of home alone. We've got all this extra time, right? We're not commuting every day. We're still doing our work, but we've got all this extra time at home. And it was a great opportunity for everybody to sort of explore things they were interested in. Like you saw a huge uptick in hobbies, right? Like you couldn't buy a bike. Like here in Canada, you could not buy a bike to save your life because everybody was buying bikes. Right? Everybody was picking up sewing and all kinds of different hobbies. And I think witchcraft fits into that, right? So a lot of people were like, oh, witchcraft, I'm going to go check that out, right? And then with this new influx of people, everything switching to online, we had this increased learning opportunities show up online where all of a sudden it seemed like everybody's teaching witchcraft. Right? Everybody's trying to like monetize and cash in on their witchcraft and teach it online because there were all of these new seekers and everything was happening online. And at the same time, there was sort of this increased social media presence, especially I find Instagram, YouTube, TikTok. I mean, I'll share my story, but I mean, I started my YouTube channel in 2020 during the pandemic. But I think what you had was experienced practitioners who were sort of looking to share and build community because, again, they're like, oh, I'm really isolated and I want to build community. And then there was this new influx of witches who were really excited to share what they're learning about. And I think that's a lot of what we saw or what we are seeing is a lot of people online who were like, oh my gosh, I don't know what they're talking about. I think a lot of it is new practitioners who are just really excited to share, right? And they might not have all of the I's dotted and the T's crossed. They might be, jumping ahead and maybe not really understanding. Maybe sometimes when we look at like cultural appropriation, that kind of stuff, they're so new, they don't understand sort of some of the ethical ramifications of what they're doing. And then they start sharing off one another, and you know, so it just comes out of a place of excitement. But I do think you had some new witches and some experienced witches who were all of a sudden looking to sort of prove themselves, and who were sort of seeking validation through those online spaces, right? Posting, right? It's almost like posting for clout, right? Like, look, I'm going to start sharing about everything I know. Now, is all of this bad? This huge community transition, this big influx of new practitioners, is that bad? No. I don't think that's a bad thing. I think it was inevitable. In 2022 now, over the last 20-some years, we have, as a society, as a whole, been transitioning to online spaces. Every year something else goes online. Like just, 5 or 6 years ago here in Canada, all of a sudden all of our medical records were available online. So our doctors can talk to each other. You go to a new doctor, they can pull up your online records from any other doctor or practitioner that you've seen, right? I mean, and that didn't happen until, I'm gonna say, like maybe 5 years ago. So, you know, things slowly have been transitioning online. And I think COVID sped that up, right? All of a sudden, things had to go online. We didn't have the luxury of time on our side anymore. And I think, again, with that new influx of practitioners, they're all people that were drawn to witchcraft in some extent or another, and would have probably come to the craft at some point in their life, just maybe not right then, right? We're all busy working and raising a young family, and maybe we've got so much going on, and, you know, we don't have any extra time, but later in life, when things kind of settle down, you know, in a couple of years, maybe in 10 years, they would have come to witchcraft. But all of a sudden, they're left with, you know, these big gaping holes in their time every day, where they're like, what am I gonna do? Oh, I'll go and explore witchcraft. So I think those people would have eventually come to witchcraft anyways. Again, it was just sped up where we had all these people at the same time. So I don't think it's a bad thing. It's not a judgment thing. I just think it just happened in a very, you know, it's just a sped up transition to where we were going anyway. Now, a little bit about my story and how COVID sort of affected my personal practice, or changed it really, was in the fall of 2019. I received a very clear message that I needed to share my voice. That I needed, you know, that I had, you know, good skills, and I needed to get out there, and I needed to help build the witchcraft community. I needed to bring my knowledge to others. And so in January of 2020, I actually had appointments at a few different local shops and stuff around Edmonton to see if anybody would be interested in hosting these witchcraft classes. February of 2020 was when the pandemic really started. It kind of hit, and it was crushing for me, because I totally had this vision that I was going to find a space, that I was going to be able to start teaching, that I would, you know, be able to start facilitating that locally out in the community. I mean, I'm 46. I'm not a big online person, you know, and I really, to me, witchcraft is about relationships, is about, you know, and teaching is about relationships and being able to spend time with people, and that wasn't going to happen. And so that kind of ended, COVID ended that trajectory for me, where I was like, I'm going to find a little space and teach witchcraft. And I was still, though, very called to share my voice. And I was like, how am I going to do that? And that's when, in September of 2020, I started this YouTube channel, because I wanted to share my voice. And I really felt like teaching in person, right? I'm going to meet people, they'll get to know me. It's a lot harder to do that through a camera. I think I transitioned pretty well, you know, through a camera, but there's just a kind of a barrier. And to me, it just works better in person. And so I was like, I don't feel like I can just throw out my shingle and be like, I'm teaching online classes now, because everybody and their dog is teaching online classes now. And so I thought, I just want to share my voice. And it wasn't about making money, it was about sharing my voice. And so I started this YouTube channel, which, if you look at, I think, my first video, where I kind of introduced myself and what's the point of this channel, I was like, you know, there's a lot of voices out there. I feel like I have something to contribute, and I want to share what I have to say. And the other thing that was happening during this time, throughout 2020 into the beginning of 2021, is I had a business. I had a very successful business. It was sales-based, and it was also home-based. And so it was very much about building relationships with people through sales, and that just ended during COVID. And my business started to dwindle off a little more every month till the point when we reached February of 2021, I closed the doors. I was like, I can't do this anymore. And that was a huge shock for me because I had never really expected to leave that industry. I enjoyed what I was doing. I made great money doing it. I worked with amazing people, right? I had no really reason to go, but the universe saw otherwise and closed this avenue down for me. And what I really realized after I left that business in February of 2021 was the thing that really, really held me there was the people, was the community, this community I built, not so much with customers, but with other, team members and people that I worked with and partnered with. And I had some great friends, but what we had in common was that business. And so unfortunately, some of those friendships kind of poof, disappeared. A few of them we've kept up, but even then we're not close like we used to be because we don't have this business in common anymore. And I was like, I need community. And so this sort of longing for community coupled with COVID was what led me in August and September of 2021 to found a local guild here in my city, the Edmonton Traditional Witchcrafters Guild. Information's in the description below. Right, to bring people locally together who were interested in my type of witchcraft. There's a great Wiccan community here, but that's not what I do. And I was like, we need something for people who are not Wiccan. So I founded this guild, and then through this guild, I was able then to start teaching. We teach online. We do online classes, and I was able to sort of start facilitating that part of my journey again that had been kind of crushed by COVID, going, yeah, no, you're not teaching people in person. So it's been quite a journey over the last couple of years, and I feel like I'm right where I need to be, but it's interesting, right? COVID really did change my approach to that part of my practice. So I think what happened is for some of us, this has been a really jarring change. I think especially for those of us who are maybe a little more established, and all of a sudden everybody's going online, everybody's teaching, there's all these new people everywhere, and it's like, wow, what is going on? But I think those changes were inevitable. Those people were coming to witchcraft. We were transitioning to more online spaces. Not that there's not a place for in-person community. I think that's important as well now that we're starting to step out of the pandemic. I think that that's important, but there is a place for this online community. And I mean, that's what happens. Drastic events like a global pandemic, they change the fabric of our communities. I think though, one of the takeaways is really that we need to practice discernment. Because I notice I talk to a lot of people who are like, oh, there's so much crap out there now. Ugh, right? Everybody on TikTok has got an opinion on something. But the thing is, there's some really good content out there online. But it's been sort of driven to the background with all these people online who are sort of just excited to share and, want to get out there and just put out, without maybe knowing all of the background or sharing all of these thoughts and ideas. But there is some really good stuff out there, and that's where that discernment comes in, and I think that's something that we need to sort of focus on now as a community, is discernment. Who are we listening to? Why are we listening to them? Who, really making some pointed choices for our media consumption, if you will. So I'd like to know from you, how has COVID changed your witchcraft practice, like on a more personal practice level? I know for me, not a lot has changed, my practice, but my practice was always sort of heading towards this. I mean, a lot has changed, but it's more about this facilitating community, which is where my personal practice was heading. But I'm curious, for those of you who are maybe not so like, yeah, I'm going to start a guild, how has COVID changed your practice? What is it, You know, what has it done for your witchcraft practice, good or bad? I'm really curious to know. So share in the comments below. Let us know what your experience with witchcraft and COVID has been like. Yeah, I'm very curious. I'd like to know what people have to say. Otherwise, yeah, that's our video for today. We'll catch you in the next one. Thanks so much, you guys.